مع بعد. So we pick up in the next segment of fiqh and ahkam of zakah. طيب, so we discussed if you have the nisab and it falls below throughout the hawl or the year period that you have, then zakat not due on it. Except, so then you will be held accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. So this is why it is not permissible to evade zakat. Now, if you spend that money in a halal business transaction, for example, you sell them from the livestock that we covered, then if within the year it dips, then it's taken out. Tayyib, if you trade like for like, what about then? Like for example, you have 10 camels, tayyib, at the beginning of a year. And now, as I said, we're mentioning camels and goats and sheep, understanding that a lot of you may not deal with this, but you have to understand the usul. And the usul from the ahadith has these wordings in it. These ahkam we take are clearly from the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And most of these are from a letter that was written by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu to the people about collecting zakat. And he said, this is what we learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it is marfu'an, and it clearly gives you a breakdown. And we'll cover that today inshallah on how much for what. Tayyib, so you had 10 camels, and you traded them, or let's say you traded 5 of them with another, right? And then you had some other that you traded back and forth. And in the end of the year, you ended up having 10 camels, but different camels, right? Now, regarding how many is due for 10 camels, we'll discuss that, and you will learn it inshallah. But now, you could say that I don't have the same 10 camels, like I didn't have them for a year. So do I pay zakat or not? You still do. Because if it's jins lil jins, then there is no faraq. And that's important because some of the people, may Allah guide them, they used to say, well, if we get money and we spend some of it and more is coming in, but it's not the same money. So we didn't have it all year. So we're not going to pay zakat on it. But that's wrong. Because jins for jins, then it does not take you away. Now, on the other hand, let's say you had gold. Tayyib, is there zakat on gold? Yes. Let's say with that gold, you bought diamonds. Is there zakat on diamonds?
Yes.
Is there zakat on diamonds?
Depends. What do you mean by like jewelry or not jewelry?
Tayyib. So now, we'll talk about whether there's zakat on diamonds or not, and that's going to come later. But now, your nisab will change, right? Because the nisab for gold is different from the nisab for silver, which is different from precious stones and treasures, and we'll talk about all of those coming up inshallah. So now, you may dip up and down. Right? For example, if you had silver and you bought gold with it, and the silver you had was above the nisab for silver, but the gold you bought is below the nisab for gold. So when you change the jins of the actual quality or what it is, then you can dip below nisab. Okay? Now, the next thing we talked about is if you have a debt, somebody owed you a debt. Now, if you have a debt and you receive it back, and you were not expecting to get it back, so you were not paying zakat on it, when you get it back, you have to pay zakat on it. If you had a debt and you were expecting to get it back, but you were unable to pay zakat on it because you didn't have money on hand, then you don't have to pay it then, but when you do get it back, then you have to pay it. If you have a debt and you are expecting to get it back, and you have the wealth, then you could pay it already, so when you get it, you don't have zakat because you've already paid on it. Those are the 3 conditions and 3 scenarios with debts. When we get to then animals, we talked about the fact that you have on animals that are livestock zakat. But how much on what? And as I said, these are all from a clear hadith that is reported from Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, who wrote it as a letter to the people who were in charge during his khilafah to take the zakat, and he gave them the ahkam of it. طيب. So a shart liha li bahima, yani what is a shart for the animals, al-an'am, those that are the animals that are from what we said, livestock like cattle and sheep and goats. One of the shurut is suma. Sum is where you have, they are grazing in the pastures of the Muslim Ummah. Yani they go out and they graze from the public lands. If you are providing food for your animals, there's no zakat on it. Tayyib. Sum with the sin, not som with a sad. This is som bil sin has the meaning of those animals that graze in public lands. So in the Khilafah, they would have public lands and the animals would go and graze there. On those animals, there is zakat. Sometimes those animals are unable, there's drought, there's problems, and you go and buy feed for your animals. Now you're investing money out of your pocket on those animals. So now the Sharia, out of its adl, its justice, it does not put zakat on those, right? Because you're already investing. But if you're not, and your animals are out grazing, then you have zakat on them. And this is the opinion of the Ahnaf, the Shawafi, and the Hanabila. And the dalil for that is again the letter that Abu Bakr radiyan wrote to the people of Bahrain for zakat, and it's a sahih hadith. And one of the things he put is for those animals that are the grazing animals. Malikiya, they take a different view. They say no, the hadith are there, but this is a weaker view, because the stronger view is based on the clear hadith, and the practice of the Muslim Ummah in the time of the Khulafa is only for those. Tayyib, how much zakat on per animal? And this is again clearly from the clear hadith. Like if you actually get the hadith, you will see that the breakdowns in the hadith. So all of these are clearly from this, not like ijtihadan and things. طيب وأقل نساب الإبل هو 5. يعني the least nisab where you will have to pay zakat on the ibl, on the camel, is 5. And طيب, a little side note. One of the ulama, Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, he also explained the issue that ibl in Arabi is used for those camels that graze outside in public land. And Arabi has a lot of words for the same thing. Jamal, ibl, naqa, they all have different linguistic meanings as well. And we benefit from that in fiqh. Tayyib. So if you have 1 to 4 camels, you have no zakat. Tayyib. 5, fiha shat. Shat or sha is a 1-year-old goat. Tayyib. Or you can give in place of it a half-year-old lamb. We'll explain that why, but this is what sha, which is with ta marbuta in the end. This is a 1-year-old goat or half-year-old lamb that you have to give in place of having 5 to 9 camels. Now, the letter from Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu mentions 5, that's it. But then he said, fi 10, when you have 10, 10, there is shatan. So now in the hadith, it just mentioned that 5, you give 1, 10, you give 2. But the ulama of fiqh, istidlalan, they said that means from 5 to 9. Because if you didn't hit 10, then the new hukam is not applicable on you. Okay? So from 5 to 9, you give 1 sheep, which is either a 1-year-old goat or half-year-old lamb. Tayyib. When you have 10, you give shatan. You give 2 of them. Tayyib. That's 10 from 14. 10 to 14, this is the hukam. When you have 15, yani when you have 15 to 19, you give 3. Thalatha. From 15 up to 19. For 20, when you have 20, you give 4. طيب? And this is for camels. ومن الخمسة from 25 to 35, you give makhab, يعني بنت المخاض. What is بنت المخاض? It is the 1-year-old female camel. طيب? And this is important because the Arabic language is very rich. طيب? For one animal, now you will find how many different words. طيب? But each one of them has a unique meaning. If we, like today, we can use the word ibl and naqa and jamal, all of them interchangeably. But in actuality, if you look up the root words, there is difference between these meanings. So here, bintu makhab is the camel, وهي التي لها سنة. يعني it is a female camel that is 1 year old. This is what you have to give for if you have 25 to 35 camels. If you have 36, if you reach that up to 45, you will give bintu labun. Labun, bintu labun is the name given to the female 2-year-old camel. طيب. So bintu makhab is the female 1-year-old camel. Bintu labun is the female 2-year-old camel. وهي التي لها سنتان. And this is in the explanation given here. When you reach 46, يعني from 36 to 45, this was it. If you have 46 camels up to 60, you give hiqqa. Hiqqa is the one that is, she is 3 years old. A camel that is female that is 3 years old. And that is from 46 to 50. Tayyib, when you get to 61 up to 75, you give jad'a. Jad'a is the camel that has 4 years old and female. A 4-year-old camel, this is called jad'a, and this is given in place of 61 to 71 camels. Tayyib, if you have now 61 to 75, this was the range, 76 up to 90, you will give 2 bint labun. Tayyib, you will give binta labun, which is 2 2-year-old female camels. Tayyib. Now, if you get to 91, because this was 76 to 90, 91 up to 120, you will give 2 3-year-old female camels. Tayyib. Yeah. And then once you reach 121 camels up to 129, you will give thalatha binat labun, which is 3 2-year-old female camels. That is from 121 up to 129. Tayyib. And after that, for every 40 more, you will give bint labun, right? Which is the 2-year-old female camel. And if you get to 50 more, then you will give a hiqqa. Tayyib. And then you can go by 40s or 50s. You can go by 40, 80, 120, or you can go by 50, 100, 150. You can do either way, and you will, if you go by 50s, then 1 hiqqa per 50. If you go by 40s, then 1 bint labun per 40. This is in camels, and then you can go to an endless number, because everyone, you will just continue to add. Tayyib, what about baqara? Al-baqara, which is the cows and bulls, will be included in that. وَأَقَلْ نِسَابَ الْبَقَرَةِ ثَلَاثُونَ. So that means if you have 1 to 29 cows, there is no zakat on them. Tayyib, now keep in mind, these are those animals that graze in public lands. If you have a cow at home and you don't have a public pasture you take it to, and you buy feed for it, there's no zakat on it, even if you have hundreds. Tayyib? And this is a part of the hadith from Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, and also the wordings of the animals used and things. There's a lot of dalail for this to clearly prove this. Tayyib. If you have 30 cows up to 39, tayyib, from 30 to 39, then you give a tabi'. Tabi' is the one, huwa alladhi lahu sana. It is a male or female 1-year-old calf. Tayyib. 1-year-old calf is given in place of 30 to 39 cows that you have. Tayyib. Here, tabi' or tabi'a, tabi'atun, yani male or female, as mentioned in the wording of the hadith. If you have 40, 40, and this is taken to up to 59, you give a 2-year-old female calf. Tayyib. Now, you have to give a 2-year-old female calf. Musinna is the word we use for a female, a musinnatun, for the female cow that is 2 years old. Tayyib. If you have 60, then you give 2 1-year-old male or 1-year-old, I'm sorry, you give, 2 1-year-old males for 60. Tayyib. So if you have 60 cows, then you have to give 2 1-year-old calves. If you have more than that, then for every 30, you will give 1-year-old male calf in addition. Tayyib. And then that can go up to wherever we need it to. The least nisab of ghanam. When you have ghanam, what is ghanam? We call sheep. Arba'un is 40. So from 1 to 39, you have no zakat in it. From 40 to 120, you give shatun. Tayyib. Sha, we discussed, is a 2-year-old female. The shat we discussed is a 1-year-old goat or a half-year-old, 6-month-old lamb. Tayyib. The same thing as we discussed earlier under ibl. This will come under 40 ghanam, yani sheep. And if you have 121, because we went from 40 to 120, 121 all the way to 200, shatan. You give 2 of them. Tayyib. And then from 201 up to 299, you give 3, yani up to where you reach past 300. Tayyib. Now, when you give that, after that, for every 100, you will give 1 more shat. Tayyib. So then you can count that up as much as you want. Now, what is a sha? We said this is a bint, this is a female. Sanatan min if it's 1 year, if it's a goat, or nisfaha, and half if it is a lamb. So this is a category that you use to give the zakat. Tayyib. Now, a couple of additional things that for us to reach that nisab, certain things have to pass. But do you have to have them for a year? It depends. Yani a yearly account is taken, but we will discuss later about childbirth and birth from animals and acquiring and selling and things like this. But the period has to go over it. What about other things like that which grows from the earth? For example, wheat and tomatoes and all that kind of stuff. Is there zakat on them? On some things there is, and some things there isn't. But for that which is, then for it there are a few prerequisites. For that which comes from the earth, tajib fiha kulli amkil makil. Makil here is that which is measured. Makil, if it's measured, or it is stored, meaning it's something that you can measure and you can store it, and it comes out from the earth, then the nisab of it is 5 awsuq. Awsuq, we'll discuss what it is and how we got that from the dalil. But khamsa awsuq, this is the nisab for that which comes out from the ground. But it should be that which can be measured, and it can be stored, and it comes from the ground. And we'll talk about the difference between that and fruit. And we'll talk about how we deal with fruit, because fruit is from trees that come, but what comes from the ground are things like wheat and rice and things like that. Tayyib. Is there zakat in it? And what is the dalil that khamsa awsuq is the nisab for it? Here you have the muttafaqun alayh, yani Imam al-Bukhari and Muslim agreed upon hadith. فقال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام ليس فيما دون الخمسة أوسق صدقة متفق عليه. Rasulullah said there is no sadaqah, and sadaqah here means zakat. In Quran, in ahadith, the word sadaqah and zakat can be used interchangeably. The ulama for istalah have now used the word zakat for that which is fard, and sadaqah for that which is mustahab. But this is istalahan, and this is just terminology for us to understand. But in the Quran and Ahadith, you will find these interchangeably. طيب, how much is khamsa awsuq? How much is it today? For this, we go to the works of some of the great ulama of Islam, like Sheikh Muhammad Salih ibn Uthaymeen and others who have discussed this issue. And what did they say? They said that if we look at the hadith terminology, yani what was a awsuq, which is jam'a, for wasaq, which is one unit. 5 of them are khamsa awsuq. How much would one be? According to the words of hadith that are used at that time, it is 60 sa'a. A sa'a, we talked about sa'a, like we talked about zakat al-fitr is 4 sa'a. 60 of these handfuls, 2 hands put together, will be wasaq, 1 wasaq. 60, 2 handfuls put together, 1 wasaq. Tayyib? And the sa'a, as calculated by the ulama, they said it's about 2.25 kilogram. Tayyib? Which then, if you calculate one of those to be times 1 sa'a times 60 to make wasaq, we get to about 300. And then when you calculate that plus with 5 onwards, so you get to 675 kg, or about 1,488 pounds. طيب? So this tells us at how much will be there. So 1 wasaq, 60 sa'a. طيب? 1 sa'a, 2.25 kilogram. And if you take that multiplied out, it'll be 675 kilograms. So if you get crop that is 675 kilogram or more, and it can be measured, and it can be stored, and it reached that nisab, then there is zakat on it. Tayyib, how much zakat will differ? Tayyib, because there are 2 ways of farming. One is that you use irrigation that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mutlaqan. I mean, everything's from Allah. But one is where you don't do any effort, you don't put any money into buying water, or getting water, or taking water there. You just depend on rain and floods or whatever else that comes and waters the land. Here, you will have more zakat. Tayyib? And one is where you have yourself invested in bringing water to your land. Here, you will have less zakat because you're putting more of your own investment into it. Tayyib. How much? We'll discuss inshallah as well. Tayyib. So now, when you talk about 675 kilogram. Here in America, for example, we go more by pounds. So I calculated it out to be 1,488 pounds of crops. Tayyib. Now, how much is owed if it is only from rainwater? Ushr. Yani it is 1/10. Tayyib. I'm sorry. So, yes. And that, when you have the 1 out of 10, yani 1/10. If you have your own irrigation, then it'll be half of that. Yani not a fifth, because a fifth will be actually 20%. Yeah, it'll be 1/20th. Yes. So if you have your own farms, and rain and natural water that comes is the one that irrigates it, then you will give ushr. You will give 1/10 of its crop in zakat. Now, do you have to sit on the crop for 1 year? No, the crop's gonna rot, right? Nobody sits and holds on to crop for a year. This is when it actually becomes seeds, when it's actually ready for harvest, not when it's flowers, when, before harvest. Tayyib? And if you bring your own water, then you will give 1/20th, which is half of the ushr. Tayyib, what is the dalil for that? The dalil for that is the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. فقال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام فيما سقط السماء العيون أو كان يعني عثيرة عشر وما سقي بالنضاح فالنصف العشر. Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 1483. So what does that Rasul said? That which is watered from the sky or wells or other watering means like this, there is 1/10. And that which is through nadah, sprinkling or watering, meaning somebody goes and does the effort of bringing water and watering or buying water, there is half a tenth, which would be 5%, or which would be then 1/20th. Tayyib. Inshallah, we'll stop here for today, because then the next thing we need to get into is the later ahkam of this, and then trade goods and how that relates. But inshallah, we'll pick that up next tomorrow night, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Alaikum salam.